Do you ever feel like your life is run by others' expectations? Do you feel like you're constantly being pulled between your work responsibilities, between your family responsibilities, home, and friends? If so, you just may not have the boundaries that you need in your life. You can reclaim that and have energy, reclaim your time, reclaim your boundaries.
Take back control of your life now by setting healthy boundaries today. It's critical that we stop and make sure that every relationship, every situation we're in, we have boundaries set so that we can actually help everybody that we want to help. If we don't have those boundaries, then we're limited in what we can do.
And we're definitely guilty of it. I mean, and not just us and others that we work with and our friends. It's hard. We feel like we need to be on all the time, and it actually makes us feel good when we are. We were out to dinner the other night with a colleague, and we were having a great conversation together, and he kept pulling out his phone, and he was getting text from a team member, and he was responding in the middle of our dinner. Now that's a perfect example, and not just trying to get him in trouble, but perfect example of something that we all do and we don't even think about it, and it's a lack of boundary setting.
Right. And another one that we have a client that this one's a little more nuanced, really, because this client was small, hired an employee, and 10 years later, 20 years later, the company's grown. They went from 1 or 2 employees to 40 or 50 employees. And during that time, that employee went to the boss because it was always the owner, always the boss, and never really adjusted to the fact that there was somebody else that she was doing an end around rather than going and talking to the person that they needed to set the boundaries with or work on the boundaries, went straight to the owner instead of talking to the person and triangulating the problem. It really made the problem a lot worse.
Yeah, and as the owner, if you have someone that you hired, and I know this happened with me too, as my company grew, I was the person who actually hired this trusted team member, and we worked side by side for many years. And then as the company grew, there were other leadership positions that had responsibilities that were higher, and ended up this person began to report to someone else. And yet it can be really easy if you don't set those clear boundaries and clear expectations, is that individual who's always reported to you, even though they're supposed to be reporting to someone else, comes to you. Right. And that's a boundary issue. Another boundary issue is we just had a leadership team meeting last week with an owner and their entire leadership team, and they were talking about a problem that they had with a client where the client representative, the client manager, was supposed to be getting all of the calls for client issues. But what was happening is a client that had been a long-term client for over 20 years with our client, what? And they wanted him to be able to take care of a particular issue or answer a particular question. And I think the problem is, especially for founders and owners that are listening, is it feels good when that client you love reaches out to you with a problem. And it's so easy for us to be able to say, oh, sure, we'll take care of that. And we talked about how that was creating a problem among the team and communication issues and all of that. And what to do instead was let's have a conversation of, hey, let me have you talk to Zach. Zach handles all of our appointments right now for these services. So let me connect you with him, and he's going to get you on our schedule right away. And that way you're still involved. You've taken the call, you've made the client feel good, but you're letting the client know that you've trusted this other team member on your team to do this. And let's face it, the reason that you hired these other team members, these leaders within your organization, is because there were specific things that you wanted to be working on. Therefore, you were delegating these other tasks to someone else. But it's very often, we do it ourselves. We find it with the leaders that we coach that we are just not good at setting boundaries because it feels good to be the one that's there to take care of the problem, to be there to listen.
Right. And let's face it, sometimes when you do that, you go, oh, I'll take care of it. And then you're already booked, or the piece of equipment's done, or you just forget all about it because you're on to the next thing. And it's not what you're supposed to be doing, so you don't think about it.
Right.
So I think that that's one of the things. So one of the things we need to avoid, and we alluded to it with the last one, was triangulation. And like that client, she was used to going to the boss, and then like you said in your company, the boss changed, and it was just a subtle change over time. And when there became an issue, she just went to the boss.
Right.
And that's hard because that relationship was solid in 20 years. And the boss needed to say, look, I understand that there's an issue. Why don't you go talk to and pass it on? And then if that doesn't get resolved, then come to me. But not, hey, okay, let's go take care of it.
Right.
Which it's hard to do because, like you say, you want to be in charge, you want to take charge, and that relationship was deep.
Right. Another way to say that is to make roles very clear. So clearly define the roles in your company. So in order to prevent this triangulation at work, it happens because in this case that we talked about, the client didn't know whose role was what. They were still depending on the owner and thought, well, the owner will take care of it. The owner's always taken care of it when I called. Well, as your company grows, you can't take care of everything and everyone anymore. So if you hire someone in the beginning, you may be coming along with, you may be CC'd on all of the emails, you may be part of the visits together. But then at some point, you're going to delegate that off. And then the client needs to know that this is your particular representative. I had a situation, too, where I would get a call from not just a client, but a team member. And the same thing that happens there, that you've entrusted this team member now to take care of these particular issues. And I think it's fine to say that I want you to go ahead and talk to Mary about this issue. I'm really glad that you brought this to my attention, but why don't you talk with Mary about it? And I know that she will listen and have some good advice for you here. And I will check in with her as well. And that way they know that you care, they know that you're going to check in as well. But then you need to be able to depend on your team member to be able to follow up and take care of that issue. I often say, inspect what you expect. I'm not sure whose quote that was initially, but one that I've used often is that you want to be able to delegate this responsibility to create the boundaries, but you also have to know that things are being taken care of. So make sure that you have some kind of mechanism in your company that you know things have been resolved.
Right. I think that's really important, is to make sure that you hold somebody accountable and that you share that with everybody.
Right. So setting clear roles within your company. Another thing to do at work to set the healthy boundaries is to really just say no. I actually have an entire chapter dedicated to this in my book, The Success Lie. Just say no. And it's just so hard for entrepreneurs and business leaders to say no, because we love to say yes. We love to be the person that's solving the problem. We love to feel that we're needed. It makes us feel good. And it's just easy to say yes. It feels good. But when we say yes to whatever we're saying yes to, we're saying no to other things. And because there's only so much of you to go around, right? So you need to decide what you need to say no to, and then create those boundaries around that. So think about in your own business, what are some things that maybe you've been even getting in the way of your team, that you've hired other people to do the job, that there's other people that are better at doing the job than you do, that you just have to say no to it and create those boundaries.
Right. And that's hard because you grow up and you're doing all of it, and then you're shedding a hat here and there, and pretty soon it's, well, what hat am I wearing?
Right.
And it's kind of scary a little bit.
Sure.
And so making sure that you have the ability to say no and control that, then you can actually do what you're called to do.
So important. And another piece that's really important that we said at the very beginning is the interruptions piece. And you need to say no to interruptions. And one of our clients that I went in to visit for, it was a client visit. It was somebody that we served in my facility management company. And I went in on a quarterly basis and I met with the business owners that we took care of. And that was always my role. And I got there And the receptionist said, "Oh, Jenny's not quite ready for you yet. Go ahead and take a seat in the reception area and I'll come get you." And so I waited for a few minutes, and then Jenny came and called me back and called me to her office. And we sat down, we began having a conversation about just what was going on in our lives. We were catching up a little bit before we got into business. And she kept her door open to her office when she'd invited me in. And all of a sudden I could sense that there was somebody behind me. I was sitting with my back to the door, and it was one of her teammates that popped her head in, and she said, "Oh, excuse me, can I interrupt you? There is," and Jenny said, "Oh yeah," like I wasn't there. And she said, there's a delivery that just came for you. Do you want to receive it, or you want me to just to take it for now?" And Jenny said, "Yeah, you can go ahead and just take that. That's fine. You can sign for it." This continued to happen all during the time that we were supposed to be together. It was somebody showing up at her office door and literally interrupting in the middle of our visit. Her phone rings while we were chatting, and she picked up the phone and took the call while I was there. Just said, "Oh, excuse me, just a minute," and picked up the call. And to her, this was just normal course of action. To me, as her guest, it was very strange and frankly felt a little bit rude. And I had compassion for her because I thought, here is a business owner who has a lot of responsibilities, who's burning the candle at both ends, who used to be able to be responsible for all of it. And as her company has grown, she's now hired people for these various positions, but she hasn't really given them the positions and the authority to go with it. So she was getting, as the administrator of this medical clinic, she was getting questions about operational deliveries and other things like that was completely unnecessary for her to be interrupted in the middle of a client visit. So it was fascinating to me that she really didn't see it. And we ended up being able to have a really good conversation about it later. And we both laughed about it afterwards because she didn't even see the fact that she had allowed this constant interruption and wasn't getting anything done. Because I said to her, "How are things going?" "Well, I can't get anything done," she said to me. "I can't get anything done." Well, I knew why she couldn't get anything done.
Well, it's easier for you because you're sitting there and you couldn't get anything done with the meeting you had scheduled because she was being barraged with other things. So
Right.
For sure, you can't get things done with the constant interruptions.
Yeah.
And we find that because we work 12 feet away from each other. And it's like, "Hey, can you? Oh, could you? Oh, could I?" And it's easy to do.
Right.
And it's just the two of us.
Right. That's true. That's true.
And I think along with that is we need to define work hours. And that can be different. It can be a different stage in your life, in your career. It can be that you have a product launch and it's massive, just go, go, go. Or you want to just go and attack one solid year in sales. Like we have a friend that's doing that, and they don't care how many hours it is. We're going from 5 a.m. till 10 p.m., 7 days a week, and let's get after it. But that's not sustainable.
Right.
And you have to set the boundary for a long term of, these are my work hours.
Right.
I am going to, especially with phones and emails and texting and everything else, we really need to say, okay, I'll be accessible between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And that's it. After that, you just put the phone down.
Right.
You put it away. You lock it in a box.
Right.
Somebody we were talking to, or I guess I was talking to this week, he put the phone at 6 o'clock on Friday night. He and his wife both put their phones in a drawer, and they don't have them all weekend anymore.
Wow, that's
until
amazing.
Monday morning.
That's amazing.
They do not have phones. And they said it's completely changed their relationship with not only each other, but with their kids. And they're more relaxed, and they just know at 6 o'clock Friday night, we're done.
Right. And as long as you're communicating that with your team and with others so that people don't feel like they're not hearing from you or you're not being responsive and being ignored. A friend of ours actually does something similar where they just have a message on their voicemail for weekends specifically. They have young kids at home, and they're saying, If you're leaving me this message on the weekend, know that I'll get back to you on the next business day. And that's another way to be able to do it. And now you may be thinking that's impossible for me. I can't do that. And I was in facilities management when I was running the day-to-day operations. It was a 24/7 business. We provided emergency services for buildings. If there was a roof leak, if there was janitors cleaning after hours, they needed to be able to get a hold of someone. And when I was that person, then I took those calls. And as the company grew, you need to find somebody else that can take those calls. And that just needs to be set up and organized, as we talked about, those roles clearly defined. And so you set those boundaries around, okay, these are the hours that I'm available. And then if you do have a 24/7 operation that you're running, then you delegate that to somebody else and they're taking care of it when you're not. I mean, we have doctors who actually know how to do this, and they have doctors that they give their caseload to so that they can actually take a break now and then, because who wants to have a doctor taking care of them who hasn't had a day off in months? I mean, none of us want that, right? And we know that we're not any good if we aren't taking a break.
Right. And we had our HVAC person come and repair our furnace because it's winter and now we needed to use it. And of course, that's when it decides it doesn't want to work. And it's a Friday afternoon. I called. There was no sense of urgency because we were able to get it to work. But they have a rotating person every week, and it's a schedule, 6 weeks.
Right.
Every 6 weeks, somebody knows they're going to be on call. It doesn't mean that they're going to get a call. It doesn't mean that they have to work, or it might mean that they work 24 hours straight on the weekend or have to call for help.
Right.
But only one person is assigned to it, and it rotates. So you can there's ways around it. There's a system for it.
Right. And also another point is to be servant-hearted, but don't be a people pleaser. So there's that fine line of really wanting to take wonderful care of your team members and your clients, but that you can't be it to this overarching that you're going to do that no matter what. You're going to do that at the expense of your own self. And that's just not healthy. If that's where we talk about these healthy boundaries. So if you're just simply picking up the call 24 hours a day, if you're picking up evening calls, if you're answering evening emails from clients, if you're sending out emails to your team members at night and expecting them to respond, then they're going to expect the same thing of you. So it's important to ask yourself, am I a people pleaser? Are some of the areas where I'm not having any boundaries in my life, is it because I want people to like me? I want my team members to like me. I want my clients to like me. I don't want to let them down. And that's something to really ask yourself honestly.
That's a good one. I never thought about it that way. You know, if you send out an email, or we send out an email on a Saturday because it popped into your head, our team needs to jump on it. No, just kidding. They need to deal with it on Monday,
right,
and not worry about it on Saturday.
Right.
And so sometimes you do, but for the most part, you don't have to.
Right. And finally, just set the example of what you want. Once you have made clear boundaries for yourself, then make sure you're setting clear boundaries for others on your team as well, and that you're being that example. Just to reiterate, if you can't say that you're going to take this time off and you're going to take this break from being always on and always available, but then expect your team members to always be available as well. So one of the things that we've done in our company is we are dealing with a lot of things that are going on. We have a number of projects and events and clients that are important to us. But we've established pretty clearly that Sunday is a day that we completely take off. Sunday is the day of the week that we've designated as our Sabbath, our day of rest and rejuvenation, our day that we're disconnected from work. And our clients and our team know that we're not going to respond on those days unless there is an emergency, of course. And we're not going to expect our team member either. We're not going to all of a sudden randomly decide that, there's something that needs to be done for Monday. I'm actually going to get that I'm going to get that emailed over on a Sunday and expect a response. that's not healthy boundaries. That's not setting the example.
Right. And I think so with that, we have to, we need to stop and assess, where are we? And where do we need to improve the boundaries? And so 3 questions or 3 things to think about are, you write down the relationships, whether it's work or family, and then write down next to it in a column, am I accepting this behavior and boundary? Am I tolerating this behavior and boundary? And then am I refusing it? And go through your list and find out when you're done, okay, to what extent do I need to change this? Is there a relationship here that I need to elevate really? And another one, do I need to put lower? So do you accept it, tolerate it, or do you refuse it? And I think we probably need to refuse more relationships like that than we're willing to admit, because we all like to be liked. I like to be liked. So.
Certainly. And creating the systems and processes and clearly defining roles helps naturally put those boundaries in place. And then you just have to keep them. Then you just have to do what you've set out to do.
Right. We all want to be valued. We all want to be liked. And as long as we have clear communications, clear boundaries, then we'll be able to do that.
Yes. So it's time to take back control. It's time to set clear, healthy boundaries in your life. And you will find that you take back your time, that you have more energy than ever before, and you have a better work-life balance. So set those healthy boundaries now.